The landings at the Normandy beaches was only the beginning of the liberation of France. The Americans of the 4th Infantry Division had swiftly established a bridgehead at Utah, while the infantrymen of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions had fought hard to secure theirs at Omaha. The Ranger Battalions under Colonel Rudder meanwhile had clambered up the Pointe du Hoc, securing the German defences there as well. However, the road to connect all three bridgeheads, especially Utah and Omaha, was still a long one. One of the main obstacles yet to be overcome were the German defences at Grandcamp-les-Bains and Maisy. Currently known as Grandcamp-Maisy, the Germans had constructed a series of defensive positions in and around the village as a part of the Atlantic Wall. Grandcamp was protected by 4 points of resistance known as Widerstandsnester or WNs. WN 79 protected the small fishing harbour inside the village itself. Grandcamp was one of the very few towns along the Allied landing zone to house a harbour. WN 80 was on the heights just south of the village, while WNs 81 and 82 were sighted along the coast, protecting both the village and the Carentan Canal estuary to the west. During the Normandy invasion, the strong points were manned by the 12th Company, Grenadier Regiment 726 of the 716th Infanterie Division. There was, however, a 5th point of resistance at Grandcamp. WN 78 was positioned on the heights to the east of the village. This WN would prove to be vital in the defense of the village from attacks coming from the Omaha beachhead. While Maisy was further inland, it housed 5 strongpoints. This included 3 artillery batteries which were vital in breaking up any seaborne assault. The location at Maisy also made it possible for the Germans to fire at both Utah Beach to the northwest and at Omaha Beach to the northeast. WN 83, currently known as the Maisy Battery, fielded 6 captured French 155mm guns. The neighbouring WN 84 had a further 4 105mm guns. 4 additional 150mm guns were set up at the Ferme Fouché. WNs 87, 88 and 90 continued on along the coast. The batteries were manned by the 8th and 9th Batteries, Artillerie Regiment 1716. The Americans were well aware of the importance of these batteries. Therefore, during the night of the 5th to 6th of June 1944, the Maisy Battery was subjected to a heavy air raid. This was just one of the objectives of the larger operation to destroy the many Atlantic Wall defences prior to the infantry landing on the morning of June 6th. The air raid was followed by a naval bombardment at dawn. However, despite the heavy pummeling, the German guns were still operational. So when the 29th Infantry Division landed at Omaha Beach, they were quick to notice that they were being fired upon by, among other things, the Maisy Battery guns. This forced the Navy to continue firing at the batteries to prevent them from firing onto the attacking infantrymen at Omaha Beach. By the 8th of June 1944, after the Omaha beachhead and the Rangers at Pointe du Hoc had made contact, Colonel Rudder was given the task of capturing Grandcamp-Maisy and the batteries. A wounded Rudder realized that the 2nd Ranger Battalion had endured many casualties during the daring raid on Pointe du Hoc. The 5th Ranger Battalion of Lieutenant Colonel Max Schneider was therefore ordered to take the lead. Following the 5th Rangers were the men of Colonel Charles Canham's 116th Infantry Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division. The routes which gave access to Grandcamp were limited, being flanked by the sea and inland by the inundated areas. However, the bridge over the Le Verret stream was still standing. On the other hand, WN 78 on the heights to the east of Grandcamp had excellent fields of fire over the ground from where the Americans were forced to approach. The attempt by the 5th Ranger Battalion, supported by a naval bombardment in the afternoon, quickly ground to a halt. Lieutenant Colonel Meek's 3rd Battalion 116th Infantry Regiment took over the advance. Supported by Company C 743rd Tank Battalion, the infantry made a dash for the bridge. One of the supporting Sherman tanks was put out of action as it hit a mine. However, Companies K and L of the 116th Infantry Regiment were able to cross the Able Bridge. Captain Pingley Jr.'s K Company deployed to the north of the road, while Captain East's L Company did the same to the south. Several attempts to silence the strong point in front of Grandcamp were pushed back. Under the murderous fire and on his own initiative, Technical Sergeant Frank Pergori of Company K advanced forward. Eventually reaching the German side of the fire-swept ground, Technical Sergeant Pergori jumped into a German trench. On his way forward, he came face to face with the German infantry squad. However, armed with grenades and a bayonet, Bergory killed 8 and forced the remaining 3 soldiers to surrender. Single-handedly, the technical sergeant advanced deeper into the German defences, eventually forcing 32 other soldiers to surrender, capturing several machine guns in the process. Bergory's daring assault finally opened the way for the 3rd Battalion 116th Infantry. Unfortunately, the 29-year-old Bergory was killed a few days later during the defence of Couvin. He was, however, posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his extraordinary courage at Grandcamp. With the cornerstone of the Grandcamp defences in the hands of the 116th Infantry Regiment's 3rd Battalion, Company I under Captain Flora was quickly sent out to reconnoitre the village. The platoon under 2nd Lieutenant Nathan enveloped WN-79 at the harbour. The desperate fighting at Grandcamp was turning in favour of the Americans. Some infantrymen described it as being more difficult and more violent than the fighting at Omaha Beach a few days before. This is a clear testimony to the difficult fighting that 8th of June. While the 3rd Battalion 116th Infantry Regiment was mopping up Grandcamp, the 1st Battalion, supported by the Sherman tanks of the 743rd Tank Battalion C Company, bypassed the village in a pincer towards Maisy. During the evening, the 1st Tanks and Infantry came into view of the Maisy batteries. The Americans were promptly fired upon by both mortars and heavy guns. As darkness was rolling in and the tanks being low on fuel, the infantry dug in and prepared the defences. During the morning on June 9, the 5th Ranger Battalion was brought forward to attack the Maisy battery. Supported by 81 and 107mm mortars and 2 75mm half-tracks, the Rangers commenced their attack at 9 o'clock. What followed was 5 hours of intense combat between both sides. The Rangers are reported to have lost their way in the myriad of trenches and bunkers several times. There were cases of friendly fire as well, as the 3 companies under Major Sullivan attacked the 2 battery-strong German artillery positions. Eventually, the 5th Ranger Battalion succeeded in clearing both WNs, albeit at a costly price. The capture of Maisy and especially Grandcamp opened the way for the 29th Infantry Division to advance further towards the Utah beachhead. Grandcamp opened the way towards Isigny, which on its turn was the final destination before Carentan, where both beachheads were to be linked up. The Battle of Grandcamp-Maisy is often forgotten owing to the more famous Normandy landings. However, it was one of the first steps to link both the Utah and Omaha beachheads, which was vital in pushing the Germans out of France. This was the Ace Destroyer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do like and subscribe if you did, and I hope to catch you in another video. Cheers!